So today I want to show you the top 5 ways that you can get to Europe in business class, the best possible experiences, and specifically how you can leverage your points to do this. Now I'm flying over to Frankfurt, Germany from JFK Airport tonight, and I'll actually be flying on Singapore Airlines business class. Now part of the reason I wanted to make this video for you is because as I've been telling people that, many people have been saying, wow, I didn't even realize that Singapore Airlines flies to Germany from the US. Like, that's so random. And so there's airlines like this that you can fly to Europe that many people don't even know about, and there's ways you can use your points very effectively to get some incredible deals on these business class flights. Now today, I am at the TWA Hotel. This is an actual airport hotel. Now, if you've ever heard of TWA Airlines, for those who have been flying for a while, you may remember this. But this is the TWA lounge down there. They actually have a rooftop pool upstairs. They have a huge, massive gym, and they have rooms where you can literally enjoy amazing tarmac views. It's one of the coolest hotels in the world. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And by the way, if you're new to the channel, my name is Eli Vicenda, aka Eli the Travel Guy, and I'm the founder and CEO of Freedom Travel Systems, where we help entrepreneurs maximize their points for bucket list travel. What's beautiful about this is as I get to help these clients, I get to travel around and showcase amazing things to you. So what I'm going to tell you in this video, these amazing business class products that you can fly to Europe, these aren't just things that I've heard of. They're all things that I've tried, things that I've experienced, things I've gone through the process of booking, flying, and can really know the ins and outs. So what I'm going to do is start with number 1 right now, which is Singapore Airlines business class. Now I'm starting with that because you already know I'm flying that tonight. This actually operates from JFK Airport here in New York to Frankfurt, Germany. Now, again, a lot of people get surprised by that because this is what's called a fifth freedom route, which is when an airline operates between 2 of its non-home based countries. So Singapore Airlines is obviously based in Singapore, but it's operating a flight between JFK and Frankfurt, so that's called a fifth freedom route. Now, Singapore Airlines is known to have one of the absolute best quality experiences, not just the hard product, I mean the actual aircraft and the seat and all that, but really the soft product, the attention to detail, the quality of the food, the quality of the service is always so good. And the last time I flew them, I did actually fly Singapore Suites on the same route, but this is where they have their double-decker on the A380 aircraft, and they have a bed that actually turns into a full double bed. In the sky, if you have 2 people flying, the divider will come down and it'll turn into a full-on like queen-size bed in the air. So it's a pretty cool experience. But today, we were flying the 777. That is the aircraft they have on this route now. And this is still one of the best ways to fly to Europe because number 1, again, the quality of the experience. But number 2, you can book this on points really effectively. Now, since Singapore Airlines is a part of the Star Alliance, there are a few different ways to book this. But the easiest way is going to be to transfer points directly into Singapore Airlines. That's going to have, number 1, the most availability, and number 2, typically the best points deals. So we booked this for 81,000 points per person and less than $100 out of pocket in taxes and fees. So that comes out to be about 160,000 points total for the 2 of us and just around $200 total out of pocket. Now, considering that this is a $10,000 or $12,000 flight, depending on when you book it, that's a pretty good deal because if you were going to go book this through a site like Amex Travel, directly through the bank portal where they charge you 1 cent per point, then this would cost over 1 million points. And again, this is how the banks want you to use your points. So instead, when you strategically transfer these points, and Singapore Airlines, again, has transfer partners from most of the major banks, then you can get a much better deal. So that's how we got this for just over 160,000. So this is going to be an incredible option if you can position yourself to the East Coast and you're flexible on getting into just a major hub in Europe and then continuing on from there, or if you're flying directly to Germany. So in our case, we're heading to Berlin, so we decided we're going to fly into Frankfurt, and then we'll take a train from Frankfurt to Berlin, because there's not really many direct flights into Berlin anyways, so we're going to have to stop somewhere else. So that's how we're thinking about that. So that is number 1 on the list, Singapore Airlines business class in the 777. Now, before I get into the second best way to fly to Europe in business class, you got to check out this TWA hotel lounge. It's pretty cool. There's like a little sunken pit right there. They have, this cool retro vibe. There's, again, a rooftop pool here that you'll see in a little bit. And it's just all around a really, really fun feel. So not only is it highly convenient, it's actually really cool. So if you're in JFK, I definitely recommend. And I'll introduce you to our little boy here, Wags, aka the Points Puppy. He's coming with us to Germany. He is a service dog, so he can travel with us in business class, which is also a rare thing, and that's going to be talked about in a video another time. Okay, so the second best way to fly to Europe in business class is going to be on the Virgin Retreat Suites. Now, this is an incredible way to go for quality of experience and value when it comes to points. I mean, it can be an extraordinary price to value ratio, which basically means the amount of points you're going to use versus the actual retail cost. So for example, my fiance and I, Bryn, we flew back from our engagement trip in Europe from London to JFK. We flew Virgin Retreat Suites, and we actually booked this for 21,000 points per person. and this was a $10,000 ticket. Now, I did end up paying very high amounts of taxes and fees, and this is normal if you're flying in or out of the UK, but especially so if you want to fly the Virgin Retreat Suites. Now, what are the Retreat Suites? Basically, think of it this way. There's a typical business class cabin on Virgin, and on specific aircrafts that they operate, which is the A330-900neo, which flies from London to Tampa, to JFK, to Boston, to Miami. There's a couple other places. They will operate 2 seats in that cabin that are the retreat suites. These are basically much, much bigger seats that really feel like a first class experience inside of a business class cabin. Now, in order to do this, when you're checking out to purchase the actual ticket, whether you're using cash or miles, you have to select either into the seats on checkout, or you can do it up to 2 weeks out and bid for it. But basically, when you do this at checkout, it's going to be around $400 a person. So it is a hefty amount to upgrade, but I did it because I thought it'd be well worth the experience, and I'm glad I did because it was pretty extraordinary. Now, this is, again, a huge suite with a big sliding door. The food is solid. It's nothing extraordinary, but it's very good. And one of the coolest parts about it, though, is beyond the huge TV screen that you have, like massive, massive screen, you can actually have your partner, if you're traveling with someone else, sit across from you, and they will turn your like dining tray into a full table, and you can sit across from each other and have a meal in the sky. That's a pretty cool way to travel. So that's going to be on Virgin. Now, again, they have what's called dynamic pricing. So basically what that means is that the price will change based off of peak or off peak and supply and demand. So sometimes you'll see these rates be really expensive, and then sometimes you'll see them be really cheap. And sometimes there's also transfer bonuses. So when I did this, part of the reason that it was so cheap was that it was already a really good deal, and we were flying back in early January, so off peak dates. But also, there was a 40% transfer bonus for my points from Amex into Virgin. And when you combine those two things, it is really powerful what you can do. So I ended up getting this incredible deal where we got a $20,000 experience for just about $1,600 out of pocket total and around 42,000 points. So if you were to say that those points are worth 1 cent each, which a lot of people would value them at that if they're going directly through Amex's site, then I basically got a $20,000 experience for $2,000. So that's a pretty awesome way to fly, and I would highly recommend this. But again, you're flying into London, you're going to be expecting some of these fuel surcharges, and you definitely want to check the aircraft if you actually want to make sure that you're flying on retreat suites. So the third best option is one that will probably be no surprise if you know me personally, because I'm a huge fan of this airline. I've been posting about this for years on social media, how incredible their experience is, how much I just love flying with this airline. And this one has an in-flight bar. In fact, I think this is the only real way to experience an in-flight bar going between the US and Europe. Usually you have to go further on to the Middle East on other airlines, but this airline operates between JFK, where I am right now, and Milan. They also operate between Newark and Athens, and that is going to be Emirates business class. Now, specifically Emirates business class on the A380, because on the Newark to Athens route, they tend to operate the 777, and typically it's the older version of the 777 that hasn't been retrofitted into the newer model yet, which is going to be changing soon. So depending on when you're watching this video, that may actually be refreshed now. But historically, it's not always the best of the Emirates experience, even though anytime you're flying Emirates is always a great time. But that route from JFK to Milan, that is an extraordinary experience. And that's because they fly the A380 aircraft with the double decker. Now, first class does get the shower, but business class still gets the in-flight bar. And a really cool story about this, about 2.5 years ago, I was hosting one of my ski masterminds that I host every year. And I had this idea of hosting this ski trip in Chamonix, France. And I was looking at the options to organize a big group. We had about 40 people going. And I realized, holy crap, there's a possibility where we could get up to 25 of us to fly business class on Emirates together and basically have a cocktail party in the sky on the way over. So I started researching, and because this aircraft is so big, if you fly on these off-peak dates, you're going to see a lot of business class availability. Now, fortunately, we were flying in the middle of early February, and it was like a Sunday night. So it was a date in time where there wasn't a ton of demand, and we ended up getting, I think, 22 out of the 25 of us booked right into business class on points on Emirates, and we had an incredible experience. I remember the seatbelt sign went off, you hear the ding, and all of a sudden you see like 20 people stand up and go to the back of the bar, and the flight attendants were so overwhelmed. But it was such a fun experience, and every time I get to fly Emirates, I absolutely love it. I actually went out of the way when I went to Colombia to go down to Miami to fly Emirates because they do operate between Miami and Bogota. I'm flying them again coming up at the time of this video, going from Geneva to Dubai. So anytime I can fly Emirates, if it's on the way or part of the route that I can do, is one that I always look for. And that JFK to Milan route is a really awesome way to get to Europe. Milan is very central, so the connectivity from there is going to be really easy, and you can do it pretty effectively. Now, there was just a recent change with Emirates, where before this, you could just book right into first class when they had availability with Emirates miles, and now they changed it, so there's workarounds. So if you want to fly first class and get a shower, that is something that has a little more complexity now, but business class is still relatively easy as long as you're flexible on the dates and you know how to search for this correctly. Emirates miles will be transferable from most of the major banks, so that's pretty easy, and you can find this thing pretty cheap. It could be as low as 72,000 points each way per person, and when we flew first class, we got it for actually it was about 104,000 points and $100 out of pocket in taxes and fees, so not too bad. So overall, that experience with Emirates, the food quality, the service quality, the entire thing, end to end is tremendous. And this is only really going to be, again, operated out of JFK. So if you live anywhere else in the country, you're going to want to do what's called a positioning flight, where you would fly up to the major hub and then fly out either later that night or the next day, which is exactly what we're doing right now. So we were just in West Palm Beach, Florida for about a month, and our flight is tonight on Singapore Airlines. But we got here last night. We stayed overnight in the TWA hotel and the gym, work. I'm shooting this video here. We're going to hit the pool for a bit, and then we'll go over, enjoy the lounges before we have the flight tonight. Just makes the travel nice and seamless, removes any headaches, and you get a cool experience hanging out at a swanky hotel like this. All right, so sliding in slot number 4 is going to be the British Airways Club Suite. So another UK carrier, which does also mean that we're going to have that same factor where we're looking at higher taxes and fees to fly in or out of the UK, but still a really incredible experience. Now, this is a pretty big suite with a nice closed door. They do operate these on a few different aircrafts that British Airways will fly, but this is a convenient one because London is so connected throughout Europe. It's also going to be operating again on a lot of routes, and you can book it in a few different ways. You can convert points right into British Airways, which is going to be transferable from pretty much all the major banks. You can also book this using Alaska Airline miles. Now, at the time of this recording, this is probably ending soon, but there is an ability to convert your Amex points into Alaska through a merger through Hawaiian Airlines, which makes this an even bigger sweet spot. And a sweet spot, if you're not familiar with that, is basically where you get outsized value for your points. So this British Airways Club Suite experience is something I flew 2 years ago now, back to the US from London, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised. You had the British Airways Lounge before over in London Heathrow. Now, they do have the Concorde Lounge, which is a different lounge for first-class passengers only, so you won't get access to that, but you'll get access to the standard British Airways Lounge, which is still pretty nice in Heathrow, and then you get a really nice enclosed suite. Now, there's nothing super fancy about it. It's just that it's easier to book, it's easier to find. The mileage tickets are usually pretty decent in terms of price. There's a lot of transferability, and it's just such an easy major hub to get into. So basically, it's going to be easy for a lot of people to consider for their flights to Europe. Now, again, if you want to avoid those taxes and fees, then your best bet is to avoid flying into London altogether, or look for airlines that are in that alliance that will charge less than British Airways will, because they pass on some pretty hefty fees. Alaska Airlines is a little bit better, and this goes case by case depending on the airline and their policies at the time. Before I reveal number 5, just check this place out again. This is pretty freaking awesome. I mean, if you're going to do an airport layover, it's so nice to make the experience more comfortable and to not have to rush. Oh my God, it's such a game changer, especially for the amount that I travel. Britt and I have often found ourselves rushing through airports, feeling like we are really tight on connections. So we've kind of just opted for a lifestyle where we're going to move a little bit slower, and that's just how we set things up on purpose. It's not going to be the way that everyone travels, but it enables us to just go a little bit slower and enjoy things and not have as much rush. So I'm really digging the vibe here. So number 5 is actually going to be an airline that you probably aren't thinking is a great option for flying to Europe, and that's because it's newer and there aren't a ton of routes, but it's actually going to be JetBlue Mint. So this is JetBlue's lay flat, essentially their first class product, where you have these nice suites and pods and the normal lay flat seat with the sliding closed door. JetBlue is actually the best domestic lay flat bed experience in my opinion. Now, with their mileage program, it's not always super consistent because it is what we call dynamic pricing. So it's going to fluctuate a lot with the price, but oftentimes you can find some pretty good redemptions where it might only be 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 points to go over to Europe in a lay flat bed and get a really premium experience. Now, they're mostly operating out of JFK and Boston for these flights, but it seems like they may be opening up more options over time. There's not a ton of different ways to book this, but the main way is going to be basically to transfer points directly into JetBlue. This may actually be one of the rare times where going directly through the travel portal, if you have a card that has a bonus like the Amex Business Platinum with a 35% rebate, it may actually make sense to potentially look at booking through the portal and just doing a price comparison. Okay. In some cases, they even have really cheap cash fares that you could look at if you feel comfortable spending the money on it. That would be a consideration for you to make if you want to look at JetBlue. Now, The reason I included this airline on here is because I think it's just a slight notch above a lot of the other international carriers for their business class. I think that sliding closed door makes a big difference. I think the overall experience that JetBlue offers is just a hair above a lot of these other business class carriers, but it would definitely bleed right into these other major European carriers and their business class products such as KLM, Air France, Lufthansa, Alitalia, Iberia, Brussels Air, Austrian Air, stuff like that. Those are all kind of like tier 2 business class products, generally speaking. There's a couple standouts in there. Air France tends to have a better product. Lufthansa can be decent depending on the opportunity, but those are going to be really your breakdowns for ways to get to Europe in business class. Now, I'll throw out 2 final thoughts and words of wisdom when it comes to looking at these different options. There's always a trade-off between quality of experience and number of miles. For example, if you just want the cheapest way to get to Europe in a lay flat bed, most consistently, most easily, it's actually going to be on Iberia. So I didn't put this in the top list because the product isn't that great. Like, you're not going to have an extraordinary flying experience, but if you're just like, I want to have an amazing deal, then if you're not going to find a crazy deal with Virgin or Virgin Retreat Suites, like I mentioned, Iberia could be a really good option for you. They'd go from the East Coast to Spain for, sometimes you'll see it for 40,000 miles, 45,000 miles. And when you factor in transfer bonuses, it can be even less sometimes. So this can be a really effective way to fly. It's just that you're not going to be raving to your friends about how lavish and extravagant the experience was. But if all you care about is getting a lay flat bed and just getting over there where you can sleep and rest, or vice versa, that would be a good one to look at. The other one is going to be Delta One. Now, I love Delta One overall. I think it's an extraordinary experience, especially on the newer aircrafts where they have the fully enclosed door suites. Like, those can be really, really nice. But here's the thing with Delta One. To book it, it is rare that you're going to find great redemptions on those. If you're going directly through Delta, which most people in the States have, a decent amount of Delta miles if they're considering this, you get absolutely raked over the coals in terms of the amount of miles it's going to cost. I mean, I've seen flights on Delta One go for 500,000 points one way in business class. It's outrageous. However, if you can find it, which is just more rare, if you can find it through other SkyTeam partners such as Virgin, you are going to find some extraordinary deals. So, for example, there was a flight from JFK to Amsterdam not too long ago where this was on a Delta One suite. It was 320,000 Delta miles, and Virgin was only charging 50,000 for the same exact flight, same time, same everything, same aircraft, same exact seat. Okay, so if you had Amex points, you could convert those Amex points into Delta or into Virgin, and either way, you'd be able to book it. You just have to know how to find it, how to search for those transfers and all that good stuff. And there's tools out there and other videos that I produce that are talking about those kind of ideas. That would be my last recommendation I had to throw in a bonus category, be if you can find Delta One on Virgin, that's a really good way to go too. It's just harder to find, and most people that end up flying Delta One are just way overpaying for it. So I try to steer people away from considering that because it's a common one that a lot of Americans especially want to look at because they're so used to flying Delta domestically. All right, so there you have it. That is my breakdown of the top ways to get to Europe in business class. I may do another video on top ways to get there in first class and potentially even in economy or premium economy. Now, if you're a business owner and you're earning all these points inside of your business, or you're spending all this money inside of your business and you should be earning more points, then I want to invite you to consider getting the CEO Points Playbook. This is the custom guide that I put together after a decade of personal experience traveling the world on points, getting over $500,000 worth of travel in the last few years alone, and ultimately helping thousands of others shortcut the process to do it. A lot of the stuff that I'm explaining to you, it sounds simple in theory, but then when you go to apply it, it can get tricky, it can get confusing, it can get difficult, and this playbook will really help you shortcut the entire process so you can get the results you want much faster. This is something I custom wrote myself. This is not some sort of ChatGPT, fluff. This is really specifically built for business owners to go step by step to get the extraordinary travel results that they want. So if you want to grab that, it's linked down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.